We've heard about the Breonna Taylor incident, and there's been a lot of outrage over that, in which, understandable, it appears that a young black female might have been shot completely unjustifiably. And the evidence, they're still working through it. It went to a grand jury. The grand jury was not given all of the evidence that would point towards a murder charge. And so they went back. I think they're right now going to be sending all of the evidence to the grand jury for the grand jury to review. And I think that is great. Breonna Taylor deserves justice. If the evidence points towards the officers committing any crimes during the time when they entered that apartment and shot Breonna Taylor, they need to be held accountable. And we'll see how that goes. There's another interesting case that occurred out of Houston a couple of years ago that has a real eerie similarity to the Breonna Taylor case. We'll look at that, and we'll see why this case did not quite get the coverage that Breonna Taylor's did. Hello out there. I'm trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
Okay, so let's go ahead. This is a website called reason.com. It discusses this case in detail. So the title says, forensic experts find no evidence that Houston narcs who killed Dennis Tuttle and Rhogena Nicholas encountered gunfire as they entered the house. Okay, so this is going to be very interesting. The Houston narcotics officers who invaded a middle-aged couple's home on January 28th, serving a no-knock drug warrant based on a fraudulent affidavit, claimed they killed Dennis Tuttle and Rhogena Nicholas in self-defense. A recent forensic inspection of the house, commissioned by the couple's relatives, cast doubt on that account and reinforced the suspicion that at least some of the four officers who suffered bullet wounds were shot by their colleagues. Yeah, I can't imagine that happening. In another video, I went over about how well did Kyle handle his rifle. And in so doing, I discussed some of the police officers' actions recently in light of their ability to handle their weapons. So this is not surprising. According to the cops who served the warrant, which was based on a controlled buy of heroin that apparently never happened, and authorized a search that found no evidence of drug dealing. So here's what happened. A police officer named Gerald Goins fabricated the entire story. He told the judge that he had purchased heroin from an informant that was dealt out of this house. So in other words, his informant had gone to this house, purchased heroin, had come back and had told him about this, and he was able to get a no-knock search warrant based on that testimony. However, there never was an informant. He made it up. So the people that he busted in on did not have a legitimate reason to have to suffer a no-knock warrant. And in fact, no drugs were found inside the house. Tuttle began shooting at them with a .357 Magnum revolver, pretty good, immediately after the first officer through the door used a shotgun to kill a dog that confronted him as he entered the house. You know, if you're trying to serve a no-knock warrant and people have a dog on the other side of the door, the dog is probably going to bark a lot. Your ability to surprise the inhabitants is probably not going to be very good. Whatever. They say the officer with the shotgun collapsed on a couch after a round from Tuttle's gun struck him, at which point Nicholas moved to disarm him, prompting the cops to shoot her twice. Tuttle continued firing, we are told, until he died in a hail of bullets that struck him at least 8 times. Do you see the similarity here? You have a no-knock warrant, cops are busting in, they're shooting back and forth, and a couple of people died. Well, in Breonna Taylor's case, only one person died, Breonna. But here we have 2 people die, plus a dog. Even taking this account at face value, the officers started the gunfight by breaking into the house without warning and shooting the dog, a reckless entry that invited confusion. Well, now this is Reason.com's take on this, and if they have a no-knock warrant, then they have the ability to bust into the house unannounced. It is not clear that Tuttle knew the armed intruders, who were not wearing uniforms and did not announce themselves before storming into the house, were police officers. Well, isn't that very similar to what happened in Louisville? Police officers busted into the house, and there is testimony, at least there is an argument made, that they did not announce themselves, and Breonna Taylor's boyfriend did not know they were police. Nor is there any body camera footage of the raid that might shed light on that question, just like in Breonna Taylor's case. But there is physical evidence at the house, which seems inconsistent with the story told by the narcotics officers. Houston Chronicle reporters Carrie Blakinger and St. John Barnard Smith say a forensics team that the Tuttle and Nicholas families hired, headed by Mike Maloney, a retired supervisory special agent with the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, found no indication that any of the guns Tuttle owned were fired toward the front of the house at incoming police. Interesting. Now, that could be wrong, but this is what an independent investigator, well, not an independent investigator, it was an investigator hired by the families, is saying. While Maloney had not completed his analysis yet, the initial bullet trajectories appear to be somewhat contradictory. We see no evidence that anybody inside the house was firing toward the door. Interesting. Blakinger and Barnard Smith report that some of the bullet holes outside the house appeared at least a foot from the door. That suggests one or more of the officers who fired at Tuttle and Nicholas did so blindly. Well, I can't believe that happens. Ask Rick over at Good Luck America whether that can ever happen. We've seen it. There was one here recently where police officers used a fire extinguisher in attempting to get a person out of a closet, filled the whole room up with smoke, and the police are firing wildly and shot each other. You can't see into the house from there. You're firing into the house through a wall. Houston Police Department spokesman Keith Smith told me he can't answer any questions about the ballistic evidence or even explain why the revolver that Tuttle allegedly used was not listed on the search warrant inventory until after Houston Police Department has completed its criminal and internal affairs investigations of the raid, which is also being investigated by the FBI and the Harris County District Attorney's Office. But Maloney's team found that police left behind a lot of potentially relevant evidence, including 2 teeth, a men's shirt with bullet holes, and an evidence tag, a shotgun shell casing, and about a dozen .223 and .45 caliber bullets in the walls and floor, which were apparently fired by the police. The .223 is probably from an AR-15 or some similar semi-automatic rifle, and the .45 caliber bullets are probably from a semi-automatic pistol. It could be a revolver. Sam Walker, a criminal justice professor at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, told the Chronicle the HPD's haphazard evidence collection raises question about its investigative practices. Where have we heard that before? Yes, the Breonna Taylor case. How many people have been convicted over the years as a result of sloppy investigations which failed to collect evidence that was there that would have exonerated the suspect? He wondered. If they do it in this kind of a homicide case, what do they do in other kinds of investigations? Okay, well, I got news for you. This is more than just a sloppy investigation. They faked the warrant. The man claimed to have an informant that did not exist. This is Gerald Goins, Houston police officer. So gets a fake warrant, and he's also in on the raid. The people who got the fake warrant in the Breonna Taylor case were not involved in the raid. This dude was involved in the raid. Two people shot and killed, and a dog. Now, let's take a look at Rhogena and Dennis. Oh, wait a minute. Look here. Wait. There's a difference between this case and Breonna Taylor. The two people inside this apartment seem to have a different racial background than Breonna and her boyfriend. That's interesting. Well, now what about Gerald Goins? He's the man, he's the police officer who fabricated evidence to get a no-knock search warrant that ended up getting these two people killed, and he was in on the raid. Let's take a look at him. Wait. What's going on here? Gerald is on the left. I wonder why this case never made the splash that Breonna Taylor did. Rhogena Nicholas and Dennis Tuttle. How many of you even knew who they were? But you all know who Breonna Taylor is. I wonder why this case never made the news as much. The one on the right, by the way, is another officer. He's been charged with felony murder. He tampered with evidence during the conduction of the search warrant. And he's being charged with felony murder, not because he murdered anyone, but felony murder means that he committed a felony that resulted in the death of someone. I don't believe in felony murder, to be honest with you. I think the one on the left should go up for a murder charge. I'm not so sure about the one on the right. I forget his name, I'm sorry, but I haven't forgotten Gerald Goins. Now, Gerald Goins, a 34-year veteran. How many people are sitting in jail now because Gerald Goins fabricated evidence to get a search warrant on their house? And if he fabricated evidence to get a search warrant, do we know that he didn't fabricate evidence to get a conviction? They conduct a no-knock warrant. They bust in. They find drugs. I wonder if Gerald Goins might have planted some of that. Okay, so this is an article on this case. Two people were killed in a botched drug raid. Investigators say the official story was a lie. Okay, this is from the Washington Post. Let's take a look. I don't want to go back over the stuff again, but there's something interesting here. The police officer who led the raid retired abruptly in March. That's Gerald Goins. About a month after the police chief accused him of lying to justify it. By the way, the police chief is a man by the name of Acevedo. He's another scumbag, in my opinion. He was formerly with the Austin Police Department, and no, I think he's with Austin Police Department now. Man, don't trust him as far as you can throw him. Another officer retired around the same time, and questions about the integrity of these two officers were so significant that local prosecutors decided to review 14,000 incidences they were involved in, including 2,200 criminal cases, an unusual step reserved typically for questions of severe misconduct. So they're going to have to go back all through these cases and see if it is possible that Gerald Goins may have fabricated evidence to get a search warrant, or may have planted evidence or some other malfeasance to try to get a conviction of innocent people. So, why didn't this case achieve national recognition like Breonna Taylor's? I think you know the answer. You know the answer to that. Like my video, subscribe to my channel. I got more coming.